think we recorded.
Welcome to the budget committee meeting. Calling the meeting to order, it is 6:30. And we are going to start with the approval of the minutes from October 12th and October 22nd, 26th. Does anybody have any comments on the meeting minutes?
I move that you accept the minutes as provided.
Second. I have one correction, of course.
Yeah.
It's on the October 26th minutes. It has me leaving the minute.
The motion's on the 12th, so.
Oh, okay, I
Just
thought
a
she said
second.
both.
Did you say both?
I thought so.
Oh, okay, well, I missed that, I'm sorry, it's my fault. Okay, those 26, what line?
It's turn, okay, line is.
100 on page 2.
Yes. It was Katie that left.
It should be clarified that it's, Stewart.
Stuart. Yeah.
Any other discussion on minutes? So do we have to redo to accept the meetings as modified?
So moved.
Yep, good correction.
All in favor? Oh, that's right, going too fast. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed?
I'm refusing to call for the 12th. Has to be a roll call because one of the members is online.
Ah,
That's right.
all right, sorry about that.
Not the vote.
I don't know all these were listening here.
On the 12th.
That doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so Tina, do you approve of the meeting minutes?
Yes, I approve.
Yes.
Timmy approves? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mike? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, you can sit at the table,
Yes,
you know.
better say.
2, 3, 4.
Oh, it's the budget committee meeting. All right. CIP, I assume Dan is present.
Yeah, I assume I am. We've looked at, we went out for 5 years, but we really only have gotten solid on 24 and 25. We had an unexpected addition this year. There's going to be a change in the NFPA regulations for tank trucks, which means we're going to have to purchase a tank truck. There's 2 reasons why. One is going to be a liability issue, which is the one we have is not a fire tanker. The tank is actually a milk truck tanker, which means it doesn't have baffles, which means it's more apt to roll on a turn. The other reason we need to get rid of that vehicle, it's not going to be this year, it's going to be 3 years out. We've put it in 3 payments. We've only got 2 people now in the fire department can actually drive the tank vehicle. Because it's a 7 speed, something or other. So that, and one of the 2 says, and if I get it in gear, that's where I'm leaving it. That's it.
His word for it.
I also, in the last couple of days, have talked to Ed, to go over, if everybody is having to change and get new fire vehicles, then is there a chance we'd be able to get a show vehicle? But a show vehicle is the manufacturer goes out when they go to sell it to people. It's like a demo.
Floor model.
Or a floor model, exactly. Which means it'll have miles on it, but it won't have any use to it. They don't, normally when they take it out on a show, it's not loaded with water. It doesn't have, they don't use the pump. what this vehicle is going to be that we're looking at is going to have a heavy pump on it. Which will give us the ability to use the pump, or not, it'll have a reel on it, a hose on it also. So there won't just be water. That's the big piece. The other thing, going forward with CIP, probably not this year or maybe not next year, but at some point we're gonna have to look at more than a nickel. Reason being, if you look, that $35,000 cruiser that we used to get 6 or 7 years ago, it's now $66,000. So it's becoming, with inflation and with supply issues. I mean, to get back to the tanker, if we put in the order today, it's not gonna be delivered for 3 years. That's what the backlog is right now for fire apparatus. So
What's it cost?
450.
There's some EPA issue also.
Yeah, that's the NFPA. The change is going to be because of the EPA, the diesels. The other thing is it's gonna be an automatic. Not gonna be a 7-speed standard, so that more firefighters will be able to drive it. The other thing we're looking at going out is we're gonna be replacing 4 bridges in the next 6 years. Which is gonna be an expense. We've got the one on Bay Street. We've got Bog Road, Spec Pond, and the one on Shaker Boulevard. So that's why we're looking ahead saying, we may have to build this fund up. So if you look what we're looking, I mean, we're not looking at adding a lot this year, but it's becoming, more and more things keep happening. A $450,000 truck that was unexpected hits us hard. And that's where we are,
Dan, may I ask you why it was unexpected?
because we weren't expecting the NFPA to come through. We were not expecting the changes in the regulations,
It's an emissions issue
right?
and they're changing the emission standards. And if you get a truck sooner rather
Right.
than later, you can squeak in before those emissions are required
Right,
and
which is
save
about a
tens of thousands.
$60,000 or $70,000 savings.
I heard you talking about the transmission and drivers who couldn't drive it.
Yeah.
And lack of baffles.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear anything about emissions. Did you bury that lead?
I might have buried
That's what he meant by the EPA changes.
No, it's
No,
you
it's
talked
not.
about the diesel piece.
The diesel
I
piece,
understood what you're
yeah.
talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, we got a CIP member too that would like to say
Tracy's
something.
raising
If I may, the other reinforcement to what Dan was saying. Phil Neely wants to trade in at this time, engine 5, which is an American LaFrance engine. 20 years old. American LaFrance went out of business in 2014. So maintaining it will get more and more expensive if we try to hold on to it. It still has some current value. It may not be on the sheet that you have, but 3 years out, we're hoping to recover. We were hoping to recover the value of that truck. Through Phil, he has agreed that we'll try to get rid of that American LaFrance now, which will shift a sum of money that could be tens of thousands of dollars back into the budget if we can get rid of that truck now and shrink the fire fleet by 1 vehicle as a result, and also therefore bring it into line with what Phil believes the Enfield Fire Department should have for the next 5 to 10 years. So he's looked very hard at the fleet and he's come up with this conclusion, which I think moves the fleet forward to a more common use role as we move forward.
And the other reason I said it was unexpected is because I was looking at the first of the 2 fire engines that we bought. It gets paid off in 2031, so. And I was hoping that we would be able to not have to get another engine till at least then. The idea was always to get rid of the American LaFrance.
Right.
Okay, we are a 2-engine town. We don't need to be a 3-engine town.
So you're saying that we're gonna sell that American
Yeah.
LaFrance this year?
Yes, we're
And then
going
we'll-
to try to sell it this year.
Right, and then we'll sell
Yes or
it,
no?
Yes, sell
sell it.
it now.
Yeah.
Pending a decision by the select board on the
Right.
20th.
Yeah. And then, of course, we'll get rid of the tank truck when we will get the new one.
Why not? So this may be the only year over the next few
Right,
that we are not financing anything.
right,
All the purchases this year are coming out of CIP.
right.
It is slightly over the amount of the money that the CIP fund, the nickel for tax rate, et cetera, would fund. However, we will not have that luxury over the next few years, unfortunately.
Yeah. When we start doing bridges, obviously, you're gonna have to finance bridges.
Fortunately, there's a grant that covers the majority of Shaker Boulevard.
Shaker Boulevard it does, but the other ones, and we don't know how much Bog Road's gonna cost because it's not just a bridge, it's a dam.
I guess I understand
Yeah.
that when a regulation changes, it says we have to have a particular piece of equipment. We didn't decide that. It's not discretionary. But there are things that are discretionary. And personally, believe we gotta find something else to offset this stuff. And that may mean you wait 2 more years to get another police car, or you wait so many years to do something.
Yeah.
And you gotta put it off because those are things you can put off. This you can't.
Right.
And I know this fire truck stuff is always a huge amount of money. And we look at it and go, it's $500,000, what? Well, the people who make those things, that's what they cost. They cost $500,000. I think that's
Yeah.
where it's gonna have to get, you know, and in particular, when you're talking, I hear what you're saying, Dan,
Yeah.
about having to go up more than that nickel.
Yeah.
I know I'd wanna see that cuts were made elsewhere before we did that.
Right. Well, that's why we're
And that
not
meant
proposing.
not buying some other stuff.
That's why we're not proposing, we're working on an equipment plan. Could be like a 7-year plan. This is what we're going to be replacing. And
This
we're
way
not
you
looking
can
to
have
come
easy
in
to
with,
miss.
new fandangle stuff.
No, yeah.
Just right behind your agenda, but it's I have an extra.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough,
Has the select board, John, has the select board considered using the undesignated at all
It
for
was
this?
in the packet.
We have not,
I mean, I just know where we're at with that fund.
That's it.
The undesignated, unfortunately,
Went down.
for the year coming is $1.
Right.
right.
Can you comment on the Shed Street property?
I can comment on it.
I'm sure people here are wondering.
Still got an ugly building.
Well, they're starting to tear it down, actually. They are tearing, I think they're going to have all of them except for one torn down
By the end of the year.
by the end of the year. Because they found what they mined, more asbestos in one of the
They're
buildings.
doing asbestos abatement this week and next. They'll conclude
Right.
that. And then the tear down will begin almost immediately.
Right.
And we'll take down 2 of the buildings, but the third one will remain primarily because the budget is 150,000 and there's
No.
only 75,000 this year's CIP.
Right.
The other 75 has to come out in the future.
Right, in the future. You know, so then it's gonna be sell the property.
Can I have a brief tutorial on your spreadsheet? Particular, what's the carried forward column telling us?
That just means that the project predated this current year. So it's a project that was there already.
To that top left, that row 1 there, that means if this project started in 21.
Yes, so that was a town meeting approval.
Yeah.
And that project, because the overhang on the building came in exorbitantly high.
Yeah, I'm not asking
Change
about
of
that
plans,
particular
but
project.
that,
I'm not asking about the project. I'm just trying to understand the carry forward.
Well, it's just that this is an existing project from 2021, and
Gotcha.
we're
It's
it's
been
carried
approved.
forward again.
And then what it says, 280,000 is gonna be spent on it over the next 5 years, right?
Yes,
That's the
years,
project
yeah.
cost.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not expecting to spend money on it this year, but
No.
in 2025, you're expecting to spend money from grant finance.
right.
Got it. Sorry to interrupt.
So,
No, that's okay.
I didn't want to long. So again, with the truck, let me see if I understand this right. You want to buy this tanker now to avoid the EPA regs that'll push the price a lot higher
And price increases.
and price increases.
they'll give it-
Secondary justifications for doing it anyway are because the old truck is hard to drive.
well, it's hard to drive, exactly,
It's
and
not safe in
it doesn't-
emergency response. Right. And you're saying that that
Right.
big price is gonna be offset by selling the American LaFrance,
right,
which we'd always thought we would do anyway,
right,
and selling what,
the tank,
the current tanker?
the current tanker, we're not gonna get much for it.
Okay. And this is an unexpected expense of about 360 grand
Right.
coming out of CIP.
Right,
That plus the general increase in things like cruisers
right,
and the 4 bridges that we have to replace means you're gonna want more than a nickel or something.
in the out years,
Yeah, I put quotes around the nickel.
right,
All right.
Yeah.
So what are we gonna do? What are we gonna call it now that it's not gonna be the nickel?
I don't know what we're gonna call it, it's inflation. It's
8
done,
bits?
You know, it's more than a well, actually, it is the price of a pizza today, not the price of a pizza 10 years ago.
Okay,
It's a nickel
There's a
more.
penny,
It's a
call it
nickel
six
more.
pence.
Behind.
6 pence.
Right, it's a nickel
6
more,
pence,
it's
I
not
like
a
that.
nickel, it's a nickel more.
And just briefly remind me, it's a nickel, what, per thousand of the value of a house?
Exactly, a nickel per 100,000 valuation. Well, per thousand,
Per thousand.
per thousand,
All right, so for every $1,000 of my house,
Five.
I'll
right,
be paying a nickel
Right.
into the CIP fund
right,
through my taxes.
right,
A nickel
An additional nickel.
increase
a nickel.
over the previous year.
Right, thank
Right.
you. That's a good distinction to make.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know what I'm gonna hear from people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm gonna hear from people? You want a $500,000 fire truck, and you just bought a $500,000 piece of land.
Well, we can beat it to death. but
I know,
it's
but
not.
I'm just saying, that's what
Right.
we're gonna hear.
Yeah.
And that's not what this fund was ever established for, is buying land,
Well, we're not talking about land right now. We're talking about a truck.
but it's,
But
Yeah.
that's what he's gonna hear on the street.
yeah.
I've already
It's
heard
not
it.
just me, you're
It's
gonna
not
hear it
just-
too.
I know,
I've already
I know.
heard it too.
that's all I.
So maybe you can steer their attention back to the truck. 60,000 and not 500,000.
If things cost money and laws change and we have to buy equipment
Right,
Yeah.
that meets the law, it's not,
and we have to keep our firefighters safe.
well, that, and we have a
Yeah.
volunteer
Fire
fire
department.
department, they gotta have more than 2 guys that know how to drive the thing. I mean,
Right.
that's
Exactly.
not great to begin with.
What is the fire department cascade system?
Please.
No idea.
Well,
What was the question?
the cascade system,
Fire department
cascade system. I don't know.
It's the air,
It's the air
air
tank.
tanks.
It's filling the air
For
tanks
air
up.
tanks.
Okay.
As
Refill.
part of writing the grant for that.
We've got to put it, we're going to buy it this year.
Wait, you said we have a grant for that?
Well,
It's an application,
it's an application.
Trying.
Right, so it's you approve it.
not an approval. It's just a,
Right.
it's a part of.
It's gonna have to go into the new station, okay?
Right.
But
Yeah,
we're
it
doing,
was-
we're putting it into this one because you can't get the grant if you're putting it into a new station. So it's gonna have to go into the old station. Doesn't have to be hooked up.
Well, actually, it does.
Has to go to the-
It has to be functioning and
It has to be
operating. But then it
functioning,
can
but
be
you don't have
moved
to,
later to
But
the
it
new
can
one.
be, yeah.
right, but it can be moved.
Pursuing the grant.
But if we were to put it in the new public safety, you couldn't even have been put in for the grant.
Okay.
Yes, for refilling the air tanks
Right.
for the firefighters.
Got it.
I'm asking questions that people may ask.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
great. So you're gonna say, what's the Cascade system? I'm gonna say that's
And the other one, which I think we decided at
dishwasher.
CIP meeting, was the 15,000 for radios.
Right, but that's in the general fund.
That's gonna go to the general fund. It's not gonna come out of CIP. Right. That's gonna be in there,
Because it's every year.
right, cause, yeah, they're gonna get 3 new radios every year, basically, to rotate them in. So that's gonna be a part of their
So-
budget.
I think another one that will, where people will have questions
Right.
when they look at this table is DPW equipment. So,
The 200, basically, if you look at it, it has 173 plus 66.2. The 66.2 is the grant for the VW money. A part of the grant is you can't sell that truck, you've got to kill it. Because they are getting diesels off the road. It's one of the old Sterlings. Okay, in order to get the grant, you can't go and sell it to somebody who's gonna put it on the road, because the idea was to get rid of the dirty diesels. So you have to basically break the block. And you have to show them the broken block in order to get the grant.
What line number are you talking about?
We're talking
21.
about, 21.
So
Copies of that spreadsheet?
I'll, share mine for a little bit. So,
So are we primarily concerned with the 2024 numbers?
Yes,
So these other columns are interesting, but
they're interesting, but they're not approved.
we probably shouldn't spend a lot of time thinking about those right now.
I was just giving you an out that there's going to be bridges in the
Gotcha.
future.
No, that's
Yeah,
good to
there's
see.
gonna be, there's gonna be other stuff in the future.
and
Yeah, on line 39, the last line there, there's no projected cost in the column, but it's got prices of items.
That should have come off because that's being purchased in 2023.
So we don't need,
We paid $35,000 for 7 tasers.
It's tasers and body cams.
No, the body cams are 5 grand, 3 of.
Well, okay, the whole
Tasers.
thing, yes.
maybe it's more than just the.
Are they
handheld
platinum?
I don't know anything about that.
There's some grant money involved there.
I'm gonna have some questions about that, because the Department of Safety pays about $1,800 for the ones the state police carry.
It's gotta be different. It's gotta be maybe.
Maybe it's not just the handheld units, it's 35,000.
That's,
Maybe it's other stuff.
We will find out the answer to that question.
I will, I know it's nickel and dime, but.
No, it's not.
$35,000 actually is the nickel.
So, yeah, definitely.
Well said. Well said.
so,
But that's not for CIP to, that's. not
No,
for stuff
it's
though.
straight up taxes. It's just on the
Right.
spreadsheet. It was the last line on the spreadsheet, so I happened to see it. And
Yeah,
when I don't see a dollar amount in the column, I was trying to figure out what that meant.
So we need to talk to the police department.
Yeah,
about
they're
Yeah,
in
when they
in a
come
couple
in.
weeks.
All right.
But I
when
just,
they come in 2 weeks,
it's,
so I believe it's fair to say that all the DPW stuff that's in here is going to see some stretching.
yes,
Yes.
Line
it
two,
is.
What?
line 2,
No, all
No,
DPW
all-
stuff is between lines 21 and 26.
Right,
Including 28, we'll see some stretching into future years.
right.
okay.
To level it out more.
Didn't we already do the chipper?
this is for the new
last
platinum chipper.
No, we did the chipper last year, didn't we, Dan?
Right,
Well,
so,
we got,
We had a chipper that was like all damaged.
yes, oh, look, that should have come off too, probably, because there's no dollar amounts in it.
Yeah.
right,
That's
What
carried
happened?
forward from 2023.
CIP CIP had put 17,000 into it because obviously.
It wasn't enough.
We got 40-something thousand because it's depreciated.
Yeah.
So in order to get the new chipper at 60,
And now people can't put,
now they can't
Things with
put
metal
metal
in it.
bars in there, yes.
We're not chipping bed frames, is what you're saying?
No,
telephone poles.
So is it on the sheet because 17 grand came out of this year's?
Is
CIP?
on the sheet because we were, the $46,900 that we got from the insurance company was received in 2022.
Right.
And it was originally that negative amount was on the expense side when it really should have been a positive amount on the revenue side. If we pull it from unassigned fund balance where it went to
Yeah.
and put it back into the CIP fund, since the CIP is paying for the full chipper cost. And
I'm
not
gonna
just
file
the
that in
net.
my head under key data entry error and
Yes,
We voted on that last
Elisa
year.
right.
explained it to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
And a backhoe tractor. Plow trucks.
Backhoe. Sidewalk track. Oh, the backhoe is not happening until 2027.
Right.
Sidewalk tractor.
Sidewalk tractors.
This year,
Here.
yeah.
And the plow trucks
It looks like this year also.
Sprinkled over the years,
sprinkled around.
Yeah.
and they'll get stretched out.
Right.
Because we're not replacing everything in 5 years. Essentially. So,
I'm confused. Oh, I was wondering how come the fire tanker only appears in 24 as 150, but that's because we're spreading it out over.
We're spreading it out,
Yeah, got it.
Well, you,
and we may not. That's based on,
Might not.
that's based on us getting a discount because we're giving them cash up front. If we're not giving, if they're not gonna give us anything for giving them the 150,000, then it isn't worth us giving it to them.
So let's,
right,
what's this line 34? Do we have to put in 20 grand to get the 80 grand?
yes,
Yes,
Perfect.
this, where these go across here, then,
Yeah.
cruiser replacements, like every year, right?
Right.
It's like one lump sum for the 5 years. Is this what you were talking about, like the plan, like
Yes.
one a year?
yes.
Okay. What I thought.
And we think the prices are gonna go down.
And if, well, some of them are, they're not all cruisers. If it's it could be the chief's car, or it could be the detective's car.
Yeah, gotcha.
And if it'll last more, because they're
Emily's getting an
hybrids,
Escalade, I just decided.
obviously,
Well, you know.
you're not gonna get rid of a cruiser that's still got good life in it.
No,
because of
I
the
know, but
hybrids.
there's nothing,
And because they're SUV now, they're not cars
yeah.
at this point, but we don't know,
Better
3
though.
years down the road, they may be back to cruisers again. Even though the state police, I think, is getting all SUVs now. But they're not getting the Charger, because the Charger's gonna be a
They wrecked,
electric
You
vehicle.
wanna go to electric bikes? Is that what you're
No, I
gonna
was
say?
gonna point out that Roy has said, because he has 2 openings in the department.
Right.
Optimistic about filling one in the near term. But if you can't fill both during this period of time, there won't be a cruiser.
There won't be one next year.
Right.
the one sitting there just getting old.
Right, exactly.
It won't, because it won't be.
So you're talking about spending 722,000 this year from CIP.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, no, some of that's taxes. That's not from CIP. Some of it's
CIP is
ARPA money.
621,950.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Right below that number, that total.
Right.
Is a breakout.
Right.
Right.
And somewhere there's an error because it says 721 is the total and 741 below, so I'm gonna have to figure out what that is.
You don't have
Probably
anything
that
in
water.
It
taxes.
looks like it's CIP. It's the block a mile, 20,000
Yeah.
block a mile.
You don't have anything in the taxes line in that total section down there.
Yep. That's it.
Correct?
That's true.
there's one, the radios are listed as taxes for 15 grand.
Yes, that is correct.
Right.
If we had 15 grand in there,
Oh, that helps.
plus 5 looks like a Z.
I will correct my calculations at the bottom and resend this out to everybody. So
Yeah.
Nice clean copy.
Thank you. Well. Chairman is doing math.
What?
Don't try doing math.
Why not?
Double checking.
641.
I always use my calculator at these meetings.
51. 6. 680.
Total CIP from the top is 606. Just a little bit less.
So that brings the bottom line down to the 721.
21, yeah.
So you're gonna redo those numbers, those calculations.
Numbers is that about?
Yeah.
So CIP is a hair above 600. And how much are we adding?
Right. What's that? 563.
Well, actually, the revenue side on CIP was adjusted a little bit. The plan would be to take the 2023 amount, add the nickel, which is $26,200.
Okay.
And then add $46,900 from unassigned fund balance, which is what we received from the insurance company for the chipper.
Right, if
And
we
put that
paid-
back into CIP to pay
Right.
back the fund.
And that would be come to a total of roughly.
600,000 and change.
So we would actually.
So this year we're
Flat.
We're flat. We're flat this year.
And then what I had suggested in CIP was, hey, maybe we can take the bump that's in 2025 and go a little more.
Push some stuff out.
Well, especially with valuations coming through, that's
Right.
that's gonna hurt.
So what did you,
Well, as well as.
what'd you say the total was for CIP?
Bills.
Like 600 and change, less than 610. So I think the 20,000 is double counted somewhere. And it should probably be 600 and 150.
And what was the nickel that were, not the nickel was like 26.5, but that's.
26.2.
26.2.
This year.
26.2.
So what,
26.9. Can't
what's
remember that.
500 and something that I heard?
That's what it was before.
The nickel will be bigger next year.
A Buffalo nickel?
No, because of reassessment.
What are we transferring into CIP?
So into CIP there'll be a warrant article, so it'll
Yeah,
be
yeah.
voted. The same amount as 2023,
Which
plus
is
the extra 26,
26.2 plus the
26.2.
47.
plus the 46.9.
Right.
Yeah, 47.
And then, Emily, you're saying the 60,000 for the fire department cascade system. Once we approve it, we will put a grant in. Is the grant for the full amount or for partial? Do you know that? Okay.
It depends on where we land in the scheme of things, so it's,
I was curious.
the effort is to get, obviously,
Get
as
it
much
all.
of it as possible,
Right.
so that's always the goal.
Right.
So it just depends on what we have to work with, what's available.
Any other questions on 2024 CIP? No? Administrative budget review.
Okay, so. Basically, I'm going to go down my list of, highlights and talking points. You have the budget worksheets for these departments. Basically, I'm gonna cover the major changes. Some of them have to do with increased budgets, reduced budgets, that sort of thing. Contracted services under executive. You'll notice that it has not been fully spent at this point. We're not asking for any funding in 2024. The expense that remains is the strategic planning bill has not been paid yet. Telephone, line has gone over. That'll be, but we're not requesting anything different in 2024. We implemented a new system, a new phone system that allows a lot of versatility for the police department. And it went over because of the transition over to the new company. But it will be less next year.
Well,
They
they
had some upfront, costs for hardware.
is the system going, is it just, what's the police station? It's,
No, actually, it's townwide.
and it's gonna move over to La Salette. Okay.
It's a combined, it's a voice over IP, so it's all online.
Okay.
And because it's connected to, through the internet, our phones will move over there seamlessly.
Does that give you guys any help with like, you know, the state system, like your voicemails and stuff can be digitized and
Yes.
that, yeah,
Yeah, we have that,
a
and
hell of a lot better.
I know that with the police department, if if the phones go down, they can still, it can reroute automatically so that they
Yeah.
still have that connectivity. It was part of the reason for going to the new system. Internet went over, we switched, we've got our Civic Plus website hosting and support that went over just a little bit, not a lot. But the new website that we're designing is going to be much better than the current one. It's gonna offer a lot more for the public to see and easier to navigate. Printing costs, we're managing to go down a little bit. I found a new vendor for our calendar, which is gonna save us some money this year as well as next year. And we're still going to continue to do the limited run of the town report, but we've budgeted to send out the warrant like we did this spring. Travel costs, they did go over a little bit. That works hand in hand with our professional development. Travel costs includes lodging, mileage, airfare, things like that, and so that covers the conferences that I have gone to and Ed has gone to. Miscellaneous went over a fair amount this year. We're not anticipating anything next year, but we have this new a painting that was restored. It was gifted to the town and it needed some work. And we promised to do that when we took it. It was found somewhere dusty and torn. And so that's been restored and we'll hang it somewhere in a municipal building. And we also had the closing costs for the public safety building, which could not be, we couldn't use the loan proceeds for that, so it had to come out of this line. The personnel lines. In error this year, normally we would split out the town manager's wages mostly to the executive line, but 7.5% to water and 7.5% to sewer. And that budget split didn't happen. So while we have a 5% placeholder, we've done the split, so it looks a little different. That's why it looks like it's going down, but not actually. The compensation study is something that still has to be implemented and that has to be worked through a little bit first before that goes in. So those are just placeholder numbers, and that's throughout the budget when you look at it. The moderator line, it went over. We had special election, a lot of work there. And this coming year, it's going to be higher because we have 4 elections. And we were only supposed to have one in 2023, and we had a special one, or 2022. So that was this year.
This year.
That was this year. Oh, I'm losing track of time.
4 elections next year?
Primaries.
Oh, yeah.
Primaries are
There's
federal,
a presidential
state.
primary,
And then the
Town meeting,
town meeting,
Yeah,
primary, state primary, and the
Yeah.
general.
yeah, thank you.
Now we know why you're here.
Right?
Now we know why you're here.
So those are the highlights of the executive budget. If we move on to registrations, elections, and vital statistics, the personnel full-time for, we call it the vital department for short. We're moving the entire town clerk line wages to this line. It was split between tax collector and the finance budget in here, but it's really cumbersome to split her wages. Every time she takes a sick day, we have to split it 75%, 25%. So we're just putting it all here and taking it out of the other line. We expended $1,100. It's not a lot of money in the vital part-time, but we're not asking for any money in 2024. We had some transition with the deputy town clerk, and so we had somebody filling part-time when we didn't have anybody. We're expecting a little bit of overtime. We have not expended any, but we haven't had the personnel, so anybody could take some time off. So, this is just for somebody to fill in when the town clerk isn't around, so it might have a small amount of overtime. We only budgeted 200. We think that should be sufficient. The next couple of lines, ballot clerks and election expenses, both have gone up. And that's based on 4 elections and the associated costs. Next page is finance. Again, we have the wages as a placeholder. Bank fees, you'll see that was over expended this year. We did not ask for an increase. Those bank fees, we had some change in staff. And so we had some things that were not prioritized like they should have been. And so we had some late charges, which we've had a discussion, and that's not gonna happen. I'm just gonna get paid on time. The recruiting public information line, that went over. We really were not planning on advertising for anybody, so we didn't budget for it, but this is advertising costs to get the position filled in the finance department. And the notes on this left say deputy town clerk, that should have been accounting clerk. Then we have, the travel line has gone up, and this is so our new accounting clerk can do a finance certificate program. It's a 10-course program. She's going to do 5 classes per year over 2 years, and this would be travel and things like that to get to those classes. Office. I'm sorry?
There are 5 pages. I wonder if you'd like to just hit the big changes.
The really big changes. Okay.
Would that be okay?
I can do that if you would like me
Fine
to.
with that.
So would you like me, would you like to tell me which ones you would like to talk about?
Well,
And do it that way?
let's talk about postage. That is
Postage.
going up a lot.
I'm just looking down the different column. There are some that are
Okay.
big and some that are not.
So if I go by percentage,
Well, I would go absolute more.
absolute more,
Yeah.
okay. So postage is going up. We have a reval coming up tomorrow, next year. And that involves mailing out to residents, homeowners, the values, letters notifying them of inspections, notifying them of values. It's a fair amount. Everybody's gonna get something. And of course, the cost of postage goes up every few months.
Okay.
As the case may be.
The next big one is repair, service and contract.
Yeah, so the increase is AccuFund, which is now in the cloud. It's actually saves us money on the IT side. Because if there's ever an update to the accounting AccuFund program, we had to have SimQuest, our IT people, also get involved, and they charge astronomical amounts per hour. So every time there was an update, we had to have we pay both companies for that update. This way, we only have to pay the one.
Okay, so are we saving money somewhere else?
There is a savings in, you're not gonna actually see it, but there actually is an offsetting savings in the IT services line,
Okay,
except that went up for other reasons.
okay, well, we'll talk to that when we get to it.
Yes,
So the next ones are all a couple of $100. Then tax collector salary looks like that's
Move to the final
moved,
budget,
like we talked earlier.
10,800.
Yes, 10,800.
yeah, so that is, so we've rearranged some things where we used to have town office IT, DPW IT, PD IT, which all had computers in it. So you'll see the old budgets for, so $6,000 in PCs and hardware and $1,800, and, you know, all those added up is now in one line. Just put all the computers into one line instead of splitting it up by department. So that's for 6 replacement PCs. We have I don't have it with me, but there is a look at what PCs we need to replace at what time.
Okay, so there's a rotation.
Then that big number is just you consolidating from
Yeah,
other departments.
all the departments are included in it.
Then the next big one of 30 grand.
Yes, and so apparently, we're getting a lot of cyber attacks, which have not actually amounted to anything, thank goodness. But this is for a switch to the government 365 with Microsoft,
Okay.
which is more secure.
But more expensive.
It is more expensive.
Yeah.
There's a whole migration cost to get there.
Having lived through a ransomware attack, I'm perfectly happy to have you spend that money.
I would rather spend this money than have to deal with millions later.
I gave you your data back.
So,
Bitcoin was worth as much, was it?
10 grand for a data backup. Roger that.
yes.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Then we have a very small, either networked printer or copier.
Right.
Then if we jump ahead to IT services, that's gone up some because the safety net defender costs are increasing. And there's MEDR, which is monitored security. It provides a greater level of security because they have a program that they kind of keep an eye on it. So if there's an issue, they can spot it and nip it in the bud.
You're monitored. What are they monitoring?
All the traffic on our network.
Okay.
So,
Intrusion detection.
yes.
You probably said that.
So the reval. Oh, okay, so that's the assessment.
That's the contract with the assessor.
Did you see that, Quinn?
Legal advice.
Yeah, that's,
We're budgeting everything in a single line this year, even though if we have an expense that belongs in the defense line versus the advice line, we will put it in the right one when we get those expenses. So that budget overall hopefully won't go over, but it's difficult to,
Oh,
does that mean that
oh, I
some
see.
of what I'm seeing in advice could actually be defense?
no.
Okay, so all of
Not
that is.
not in the actual this year, but in the actual for 2024, even though we're requesting a budget only in advice. If we have to do any legal defense, we would charge it to the legal defense line, even though it's not budgeted in
Yeah.
it, because it's still in that department.
Is that, I'm aware of it.
So you gotta put $1 in it though,
No, you
right?
don't.
No? Oh.
You have to put $1 in the 4153 budget, the legal budget overall.
Got it,
It
yep.
doesn't have to be in that particular line.
got it.
So. We have.
So those balance out essentially.
Well, we're hoping we don't even have to spend it all.
But we've gone 13,000 over it in attorney advice
We did.
so far this year.
Right, but we haven't spent any defense. But we have.
Right, but defense
And
is usually somebody appealed the zoning board.
Right.
That's usually what that is. It's-
Nah.
We-
Worked
we don't know
hard
when
not
it's
to
gonna
piss anyone off this year.
Well,
No,
you just never know when
You do never know. So when it comes to personnel administration, obviously, there's gonna be increases in there. It's a lot of the things, the taxes and that sort of thing are based on the projected wages, we only have a placeholder for, so those are subject to change. We did get our, health insurance costs, so that should be an actual. And that is based on full staffing, and it's also subject to change because we're in the middle of open enrollment. And you don't know what people are gonna choose, a single plan, a family plan, or if they're going to not take our insurance, which is the best thing.
So we don't really know what that number is gonna be. You've got something in there, so placeholder, worst case kind of thing.
Yeah, all of the personnel administration is actually subject to change.
Gotcha.
following open enrollment and things like that, and the compensation study being plugged in.
Let's just wind on down to the next section. I'm not seeing anything else on that page, actually.
No,
Some of those numbers look big, but they're
Yeah.
pretty small in.
so what's the $10,000 increase in rent?
The $10,000 increase in rent is because we budgeted 10,000 this year and we spent 18. So COVID government assistance programs have gone away
Services got it.
and there's inflation, rents have gone up. So if somebody needs rental assistance,
Oh, that's what that is?
yeah, that's rental assistance.
Got
Yeah,
it.
it's, as you can imagine.
You have some space for some more
It's-
letters there. You could say.
It's
rental
interesting.
Assistance.
Oh. So you're saying that,
could.
oh, sorry. So you're saying that in 2022, we didn't get any requests because people had government assistance, and then that came back in 23. When the government assistance disappeared, they came back to us.
Right.
Well, and that was 2022, was the town office still, was it open all the time?
We actually only closed a little bit in 2020 and we've been open ever since.
Yeah, it's, you know, with people coming in and out.
I think they were getting help from somewhere else.
Yeah,
So-
there was
Well,
a lot of money being flowing from the government for.
So this year, nobody has asked for assistance with utilities.
Correct.
You're suggesting increasing it a little bit just in case.
Just because the cost of everything is going up and the assistance programs have gone away. But I don't know specifically the deadline for all the individual programs. If you would like to have the Human Services Director come in, she's happy to do
Yeah.
that, but
Some of that stuff literally just ended,
Happened.
but New Hampshire's ended a lot sooner than Vermont's did. I know that Vermont, their governor extended it like another 6 months at one point.
and we do have a fuel fund. There's not a lot of money in it, but there's a little, and there was a suggestion that we put a call for more money to be donated for the fuel fund, which would keep that line down if we have that money to rely on versus budget money.
Well, certain of the regionals, help with it.
Right. So if we can get people to find help elsewhere, absolutely, we will help them find resources elsewhere.
So the next big one is miscellaneous under conservation,
Okay, so that has changed.
train restoration.
So the original budget submitted by the Conservation Commission, rather than breaking it out into the different line items, they just did one flat amount and stuck it all under miscellaneous, except for their meeting records. And we had gone back and said, you know, really you should be budgeting for the different items, not just throwing it all into one pot.
Got it.
Well, apparently they had done that, but I wasn't informed about it, and today I was looking for something else in the Conservation Commission minutes and found where they had done the budget.
You did it a couple
You
of
did,
years ago.
you did, but I never got it.
Oh.
So in your budget worksheets is the new Conservation Commission requests, where it has $3,600 in total, which is a little bit less than they were asking for when it was just lump sums. And
Got it.
so the breakdown is on those sheets.
Alright, so that explains why it's a big plus in one and a big negative in a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right.
So this is about with their changes to their new budgeting mode.
So what's on
Or
this
we should-
is old information, because I only just got the Conservation Commission stuff today and just slipped it into your packet for you.
Yeah, their total request is the sum of all the
29.
numbers. See how it's 800,000,000,000,3,000,000.
Yeah.
So I guess it got broken up.
It did get broken up, but I was not aware of that until today, so
Send that out.
that's fixed. You
It's
actually
in
have
here.
the work in your,
It's in your packet.
She said it's in here.
I gave you the
Okay.
worksheet for that. There's nothing really unusual in there.
Right.
They did budget $1,000 for trail maintenance. That's new.
That's nice.
Is that
It is.
train restoration is
Trail. It should be trail.
Principal expense, I assume that is,
Okay, yes,
that's just loans, right?
that is loans. So when you see the actual that's there, that changes. all the money that we get reimbursed from the CIP capital reserve fund for those things that the loan payments are coming from that will come out of that line. So in this year, we have about $7,900 in force main, and the rest of it will be, a lot of that will be coming out. We have not made a payment on the public safety building yet, so those are gonna be adjusted a little bit. But the request for 2024 does include payments for
Huh.
public safety building.
So the backstop, we are not doing?
Correct. So that turned out to be a little more expensive than anticipated when the recreation director was talking to somebody for prices.
Uh-huh.
They thought it was a standard backstop and ours is extra tall. So there's a thought about reconfiguring the park, in which case the backstop might be different.
Okay.
So it was suggested that perhaps for that, and this is something that Ed had just talked about, the committee might want to consider, rather than encumbering the funds for a backstop, since it's going to be more than that or different or another time, let that lapse back into fund balance. And then you could reappropriate $10,000 for recreation facilities, but it can be for perhaps refinishing the floors of the community building, which really need to be done. But that's,
And they'll consider the backstop in another year. After they've
Perhaps.
done some planning.
Right. Would get Lebanon baseball. That's, they get sponsors. That's all their backstops are paid for by.
Interesting.
Lebanon knows how to do baseball way better than we do. You know, they're serious about it. Great.
and the master plan
Make
is
a
another.
comment on, the refinishing the floor, in the community building. That's gonna be a non-ending battle, but the beginning of that, it's not maintained well. It's not swept regularly, it's not cleaned regularly, which is a lot of wear and tear. And there are, like, the people who go to yoga or bone builders, they're sweeping the room themselves because the floor is disgusting.
Don't we have a maintenance person?
Right,
Does
and
that?
I'm,
We do have a maintenance person, but we will be advertising for a new maintenance person very shortly.
We did have one.
And no, we didn't fire him.
You didn't hire him?
We did not fire him.
Oh.
not fire.
But we are gonna be advertising for a new
Yeah.
maintenance person.
So it's not an additional person, it's a replacement?
It's a replacement person.
Which we will not talk about.
Yes, in a public. So,
The master plan is another thing. They did not do that this year. And Ed also suggested that that amount be allowed to lapse and we can reallocate it in the 24 budget for master plan again.
is that because the contractor moving out of country?
Yes.
Okay.
That's part of it, I think. Yes.
Then capital reserve, I assume that's just moving money between funds.
So the capital reserves, that's a transfer to capital reserve, that's $600,068. That is the current year budget for, plus the extra 26.2, that nickel, and the 46,900. So
Okay.
that's the amount that would be raised, the 46,900 coming from unassigned fund balance. We are not requesting any funds for the employee and retiree benefits trust fund because we think that it's a reasonable level now where, you know, where we're at. So we're not gonna ask for any more money.
What?
So the rest seems pretty small.
Yeah, it's actually, it all is pretty small. We have the placeholders for, employee wages, which all the insurances are based on that. It's just the water and sewer like portions.
What's going on with the water debt principal expense? Just as a matter of curiosity. Why are you asking for 59,000 there?
Because we're anticipating having a payment on the water system improvement SRF loan.
And it will come from that line.
It would come from that principal line, yes. And that's why the interest also is gone up.
within
The
that.
water system improvement is,
Water system improvement.
Yeah. so that's that project they just gotten almost completely.
It's at that
Yes, they-
1.9 million that was approved at town meeting years ago,
Yes,
that they got half grant for.
well, I think, was it that one they got half of it for, no, I think it was the sewer they got half of it for, but the two projects ended up costing together the same, the amount of
Right.
one, so.
Okay.
We had a two for deal.
So we're gonna pay that off. Is that why it's so big?
No, it's just, you have
No,
to
it's-
start paying it.
We're just gonna start paying, we're gonna start paying it off.
Big numbers.
How come
And
they
they-
were so small before?
Because they didn't have any loans to speak of.
That's all the water the board
That's
they're
Maple
doing.
Street.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And the sewer's pretty static as well. Principal and interest payments are a little bit different. We're expecting we have 50% of the 2012 sewer force main comes out of the principal line. The interest line is fairly high for that amount of principal because we are expecting an interest-only payment on the sewer system, SRF loan. And we don't technically have to do that. There are different ways that you can pay off SRF loans. You don't have to make the interest payment. They could roll it into the principal, things like that. So that might be subject to change if we look at it a little more carefully and see which way we save more money. And I think probably if you don't roll it into principal, you're better off because you don't want to pay interest on your interest. First.
I'd rather do a principal only payment.
We don't have that option. I wish we did. So there are some cases. So in the next two sections, capital projects and the TIF district, we do make principal only payments whenever we get a state aid grant. So that is the state aid grant amounts are budgeted for. We don't pay it unless we get it. So we wait for it to show up and then we turn around and pay extra to principal to get those loans down.
Are we still doubling the payment on?
No.
Okay.
So that's all I have for.
Quick question, what's the net increase, decrease year over year, total budget?
I don't have the total budget numbers right now because we haven't finished going through the whole budget.
When will you have those?
I don't know when Ed is working on that right now.
Next couple of meetings are just us hearing from various departments what their proposals are.
Gotcha,
Then Ed will assemble it all, feed us the whole
And
thing.
then,
thank you.
yeah, then there's a meeting about compensation.
What's that?
Then there's a meeting on compensation, and then everything gets up to the.
I know I mentioned this before when we talked, but you know, when we talked about our first meeting, you just mentioned like the master plan expense is 25,000. We're just gonna let that lapse. Not gonna spend that this year. Obviously, there is gonna be money spent next year on master plan because we have to do it. I think showing the townsfolk like a dollar amount that was not spent in total when this is presented, that say, you know, listen, that in total, there were, you know, $98,000 that was budgeted to be spent across these three areas, and it was not spent.
Mhm.
Because then when it's asked for again in this other year, it's, people can do that basic math of, okay, wait a minute, that's money that we didn't use, so now we're gonna use it this year. You didn't spend, we don't have the ability to put it in a savings account and say, oh, we'll take it out next year.
Maybe that's
So,
something that could go on a slide.
one of the things-
So I mean, I'm just saying, just one slide that shows what we didn't spend.
We have.
So I
that.
have provided, it's a little early in the process to do this, but I do a financial overview statement that provides towards the end of the year when we know it's a little too
Yeah.
close, how much we have unexpended and what, or, we can't
Not
overexpend.
expended.
What we have not expended, usually I choose things that are, 10,000 or more. Where did we not spend all the money? What constitutes the addition to the unassigned fund balance in our estimation? So you'll get that later.
Yeah, I think, I mean,
And so those
I
numbers
think town people would appreciate it too. I mean, especially if you saw like one particular department.
Right.
Came in under, I mean, that. You know, I don't know who would, maybe no one does, you know, but I'm saying if I saw that the police department or the fire department came in under budget, then when they're asking for something, my position is different on that. And
Well, that's gonna show up in your budget reports anyway,
For us, but-
department wide. Well, on the department level, that'll show up for the public as well.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to see if the entire department is underexpended or.
And so usually last year and the year before, there was a slide in the town meeting presentation that showed, yes, we didn't spend everything. Here's the big hitters. Boom, 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 boom.
Good. That's what we need.
And that's
So-
25,000 doesn't.
What's next on our agenda?
So next,
Well, unless you wanna go over your expense report, because I have, only 2 pages worth of, comments on the current year expense report.
I'm wondering why I don't see the regionals on the agenda.
I think they're coming up on a future agenda, but I didn't know if you wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know if you would want to look at that since we were talking about the other human services.
you have the Excel file with the dates.
I do not.
So last meeting,
Yeah.
we had a piece of paper that's in my office at home. Maybe it makes sense. When you, on the posting for the calendar, it just says there's a budget meeting.
Mhm.
When you click on that, does it tell you what we're discussing in each meeting? Town website?
Well, when the agenda is posted, it will tell you. So this one had administrative budgets review.
Right,
So the next agenda will tell
So you
you.
only need,
And it even has on here.
You can take a picture of it with phone.
yeah,
You just.
I would do
post one at a
something neater
time,
and tidy.
right? you just post one at a time.
Yes,
You don't
But-
post a schedule.
yes,
correct.
But this agenda tells you
You're being handed a schedule.
What's being discussed.
groups will be here next time.
right, but the,
He's got what he wants.
Yeah.
it's not on the posting.
They've got it.
But He's asking for us to put it on the
I'm saying,
posting.
if on the
It's on the
calendar.
agenda.
I know, but
So,
I'm, he's
yeah.
looking for
If
it
on
on
the
posting.
so this is in the calendar, on the town calendar, it says enter budget committee meeting.
So you want me to put in the posting for each individual
Right.
meeting, you want me to put the subject matter?
Yes,
That would be useful to people.
yeah,
I can do that.
And so essentially, the full budget.
If you're concerned about the police, you can show up.
is
January 11th.
January.
That's the next meeting.
Big meeting.
Yes, the next one, DPW. Oh, not a DPW, police, fire, EMS, budget. Yeah,
It is.
public safety, it's at DPW, but it's
Oh,
not public,
that's it.
it's not the public works budget. That colon is on the other side.
That's
I almost read it
all
wrong
by itself.
Thank you. All right, any more questions from the committee? Before we open public comment?
Are we going over the appropriation revenue and this other form that we got? 434. I'm not asking that we do it. I'm asking if you're planning to do that.
Our information is.
And we actually covered a lot of what's going on, when we talked about the other budget. I mean, the biggest highlights are ambulance, mutual aid services and ambulance personnel. Because we're not responding as often, the mutual aid responds more. One of the things that we can do with that budget line is, and I'll tell Emily now, is if we get the number of calls towards the end of the year, the number of calls, we think that they bill us for the prior year, number of calls. So if we find out at the end of the year how many calls we've had for service, we know the flat rate for each call. We can maybe budget a little bit closer on that. So something we're gonna work on.
That's ambulance, sorry, I didn't catch that.
Ambulance,
Okay.
yeah.
How much
So-
are they charging for each call at this point?
I think it's about $350 each call.
Consider that cheap.
That is cheap.
yes, yeah,
It's reasonable.
It's.
It's not blown out.
I would be happy to pay that if I.
they're also building it though. deductible.
That's.
They're charging us $350 plus what they're charging you, the insurance or the individual.
Yes, this is partly just to be available and respond.
Is there-
So the gravel road surface under highways is overexpended because of the July storm. Yeah. Overall, the budget's actually, if you look at the percentage left in each budget, it's pretty darn close. Cemeteries looks like they're going to overexpend, except they're pretty much done for the year, so I don't figure that out. Shovel fleet.
I'm trying to follow along and I don't know which handout you're on.
The appropriations report.
Okay.
So if you just look at the expenses in the ambulance lines, they're a little off, but if we don't expend in one, we expend in the other one instead. And then the gravel and road surface, that's on page 6, I believe, in the highway budget, highways and streets. We have the July storm, which all kinds of damage, so that's why that went over.
Yeah.
And, there's not a lot else. It's small money. There was nothing showing us anything expended in the gasoline and diesel lines for water and sewer because we hadn't been getting the breakout in the transfers from the highway department. So that's being corrected and this will be going up, going forward.
Thank you.
And that's about it.
On page 9. Did we not budget for public safety building? Or is that going to transfer to a different line item?
Page 9. Oh, for the improvements? So we're talking under the 4903 buildings?
Yes.
So that's for capital outlay purchases, and we have already, we've already got the financing, so our auditors, we don't want to budget for it again. We've already budgeted for it the year that we've got the loan approval. Was not this year. So we have an 08 fund just to track the expenses to make sure that, but it's not a budget item anymore.
Okay.
It already was budgeted when we put the article in to raise and appropriate the funds.
So that is eventually then gonna go to the loan. Will it stay, at the end of the year, does it stay on that line item?
So you're not gonna see anything in the capital outlay
Okay,
because the budget has already, that was the prior year budget.
got it. Was that the same reason there's the minus $1.4 million on the water systems improvement?
Where are we looking
Page 11.
Page 11.
I'm just looking for all the big negative numbers.
at? Yes,
Okay.
so that's actually going to be offset with loan proceeds.
Okay. Any other questions? Public comment?
So can I make a comment or ask a question about the compensation discussion that I know has taken place, but will be taking place again?
Maybe the night of that compensation.
Excuse me?
I think we're discussing that at the next meeting, right? Or is the one after?
Next one. So the last meeting was just the company presenting the report.
Right?
And then I believe one of the future meetings is where Ed will present what he's proposing. We actually do.
Right, but I would like to make a comment about the upcoming proposal and those thoughts.
Yep.
Just for me to get this on the record.
Yep.
So, I just want to say, first of all, I know we have a lot of great employees in town and we have some that need to go away, just like every other place. And I just feel like the plan and thoughts about giving people big lump sums and a COLA on top of it to do catch up people to market and that sort of thing is going to be a constant uphill battle. We cannot begin to keep up with towns around us. I remember a couple years ago or so when I was on the budget committee, it was the DPW. Oh, if we don't give these truck drivers more money, they're not gonna stay. So we gave them $4 an hour increase in pay. People are still leaving. I know you're gonna say they're leaving for more money elsewhere. I know for a fact, at least 2 or 3 that it's more than the money, but that's a whole nother story. But I just want to be on the record to say that I don't feel like we can keep giving huge lump sums and a COLA and keep trying to keep up with our neighbors. It's gonna be an impossible task to do. I'm all for trying to get people on an even keel and pay people well, and I feel like personally, people in our town are paid pretty well and get a good benefit package. And I'm just concerned about taxpayers in town. And I sometimes say, are we at a point where the budget committee works hard and you look through all of the stuff, but everyone says yes? And it's, I don't know, I say at some point, you need to draw a line in the sand. And so that's my.
So I'd like to clarify, Jean. So part of that study is comparing us to towns more our size. So not necessarily, they looked at data like from Lebanon and Hanover that are bigger than us.
Was
Because-
Hanover and Lebanon included in the study?
Yes.
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 That's nuts. Hanover.
No, not in terms of what they're recommending, but
It was in the study though.
so we saw what their data is. And the recommendation isn't necessarily to keep up with them. It was, there were a lot of towns our size, you know, similar things. And that's the majority of the data came from that.
I believe there were 50 towns.
50?
Actually, I think 50 were.
Yeah, 50 were
invited, but 30
30
responded,
came
which is
back.
still a very high response
The
rate.
the issue is that Lebanon and Hanover are going to skew the results.
No,
We
not
know
the way they did it, I don't believe.
Yeah, they used median and percentiles, so if Hanover was, I would have to look at the numbers, but if Hanover was way high.
Yeah.
Compared to the other 30, it would have not impacted.
Gotcha.
Those
numbers available somewhere?
Yeah.
Gotta
The
be
study is
public
available by
Study is-
public record
Public
request.
record.
Right.
It
Was
is.
part of the recommendation from the consultant to implement a step plan?
Yes.
Yes.
I will say that I was not here because I was really ill and I don't like to share. But I asked specifically when the man came about whether benefits would be considered, and they were not. Because he said you can't compare apples to apples.
Hard to do, but they should have done.
You can ask flat out, does an employee contribute?
Yep.
How much do they contribute?
Yep.
Is their payment $30 a week for their health insurance or whatever? You can't compare plans. I understand that. But there's a distinct difference, and whether or not someone is collectively bargained or not is a distinct difference. Because if you're collectively bargained, there's a percentage of your wage you pay for that. And I think that, you know, that specifically, there's a dollar amount associated with if you work someplace, how much do you pay for your health insurance? You pay none, you pay $50 a week, or do you have, I mean, just that. I know we can't get into deductibles and all, and I thought that would be included because it's
a factor.
As a longtime public employee, yeah, that's why I do what I do.
Just a little bit of information. We just moved up here permanently a couple of years ago, but the town in Massachusetts that I'm from, I was involved in the town. We had a step plan that we implemented about 7 or 8 years ago. We threw it away. We threw it away because when you start giving automatic raises plus COLA, the town can't afford it. And I think just beyond the record, I think we are headed for trouble if we do a step plan. They are a disaster. More and more towns are across the country are going away from them. And I'm surprised that the consultant, who I thought was very good, by the way, is recommending it. I think it's trouble. I think it's trouble.
Can you please state your name for the record, sir?
Bradley Rich. Yep.
Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the compensation study was to gather data so that we could look at a step and a grade system for, pay. So that didn't come independently from that.
No.
That's one of the reasons we were.
Oh, that was,
So
an
that's the
idea that we had.
that we were exploring what, what would this look like?
Yeah.
And it can be tailored to,
We
address
would be-
some of your
Yeah, we would
concerns.
be better off paying for performance, because you really want to give a big increase to the high flyers in your organization. You don't want to be restricted. If someone is doing a huge job, you want to give them the 4 or 5 plus the COLA. But if someone is dead wood, or they're just going through the
Well,
motions,
then they don't get.
Well,
they shouldn't get any raise.
step
And
step
so
raises
the-
are somewhat merit-based.
It should be totally merit-based. But
Right,
anyways,
that's something that the town manager is still working on, is how that would be implemented and what the criteria would be. So that's why it's not at this meeting, because he hasn't done that yet.
Enough.
So, I'm sure there'll be a lot more details at the next one where that's brought up. I don't
You
know
know, but
how many weeks out that is.
for the record, the state of New Hampshire is doing away with the step system and going to the standard occupational code, the SOC system, which is what the feds use.
Well, we use steps in the federal government.
Yeah, but it's
Grade
now,
classifications and
it's,
steps.
it's different than what he's talking about, what traditional steps are. And it's more like you would look at what somebody's occupational duties are and what those expectations are. So if you had a clerk in the
Yeah,
town hall.
I was in grade,
Yeah.
whatever.
And that's really where it comes down to. But in New Hampshire, if you withhold someone's increment, their step, that's grievable at the Public Employee Labor Relations Board, and it's deemed as discipline. So it is a very distinct difference in New Hampshire between New Hampshire and Massachusetts. There are some real hairy things in public employment here.
Feel like when they were here, some of the things you're saying, we discussed.
Yep.
And we toyed around with, how would you address some of these things? And, would every step always be the same amount from one step to another?
And the video of that meeting is online.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is definitely some discussion about not making your higher level steps as large of a percentage, your higher level earners at as much of a percentage as your lower level, or because and your long-term employees, generally speaking, you don't give an increment every year to people who have worked there 15 years. They've got to go 2-3 years. It's your newer employees at your lower steps that you do it with. But I just, for the record, I remember specifically asking the man about was the benefit cost going to be
Yes.
included?
And
And he said yes, and they're not. I read the minutes and he said it was apples to apples, and it's a distinct difference. I think even in the private sector, if somebody goes to look for a job, one of the questions you ask is how much is health insurance, how much comes out of my check every week?
Right.
And
I don't know the answer to this question, but is, our benefits package for our employees considered pretty good?
I think it's on par with,
Still is.
I think it's on par with other towns. I don't think it's, yeah, and it's the state retirement system, so.
Does anyone know, like, how many openings we have right now? How many vacant positions?
At least it does.
Well,
Two police officers, right?
two police officers, though there's one that we might be close on. We have, I think, 3 positions, 2 or 3 positions on highway. We did just hire a new, water and sewer person to replace it, to fill a vacancy there. And we just got a grounds person started.
Those
We have the janitor maintenance position, and there might be one more.
half a dozen roughly.
No, less than that.
It's not saying there are that many, but
Some of them are
They're
being filled
being
soon,
filled,
yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, could be a half a dozen.
Always a challenge.
2 cops, 3 highways
Two or
currently open,
Yeah, 4 or 5.
but not dozen, not 20.
other comments?
Thank you.
More, but I won't.
Bring them to
I've
the
had dinner
compensation
yet.
meeting. Come to the compensation meeting.
Well, it's not just the compensation. I'm also extremely concerned about the project coming up for Whitney Hall being done in the winter. Anyone that has a little bit of knowledge about construction knows that the cost for concrete and all of that in the winter, it just goes through the roof because extra things have to be done and we're going to have lots of extra heat and all of that. So I'm just really concerned about the overrun on that project.
I honestly don't know what the timeline is for what parts they're gonna do, because I know there's the renovation portion that's. I don't know when the.
Got a lot
development
of
is
demolition that they're gonna be doing.
Well, inside there is a lot of demolition inside the existing building. They're gonna be pulling things. in.
Are we using somebody who might know that
Right.
concrete costs are expensive in the winter?
I'm quite sure that the company that we're using, Breadlove, knows the costs of concrete in the winter. And, I wouldn't be surprised if Ed knew as well, but I don't know if they're doing the concrete work in the winter.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I don't, that's happening
Breaking
in the
ground the
spring.
second
I don't,
week of December.
they are,
Breaking ground the second week of December.
but they're starting with,
The price
inside.
comparison, cost of heat, hot water in the concrete is actually less than what's projected to be the cost, increase in cost of concrete in the spring. They went up nearly 15% this year. It's not expected that the total costs for heat protection as well as hot water in the concrete are going to exceed the costs of 15% additional come the first springtime of the year. The other problem is that the contractor has agreed to meet this year's pricing. Next year's pricing will be substantially greater.
Does that help allay some of your concerns there? There are people who are thinking about this stuff. Seems like they're making good decisions. They're guided well. And they're,
Regards for Breadlove. I mean, I work alongside of them on the municipal
Yeah.
facilities and I don't, have any qualms with them.
Looks like they're meeting weekly.
Every week, every Tuesday, 3:30, open meeting, anyone wants to go. Discussing, Whitney Hall 1 week and the emergency service building the next, so they alternate weeks.
Busy.
Has been for weeks and will continue several more.
Other comments?
sounds like we're about done.
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Dan.
Tina votes aye.